Hello and welcome to UELTras here on Ranks FC. I'm Jack Collins, and we've seen the last 16 draws take place for both the Conference League and the Europa League after what was an amazing night of football last night. I'm going to be back ahead of those ties to look at them in more depth, but thought I'd just give a little bit of an initial reaction to the draw, starting with the Europa League. So most of the big guns avoided each other in the Europa League last 16 draw, but what has thrown up for us, I think, is some really well-balanced ties. I'm going to look at a couple here just that have really grabbed my attention straight away. And I'm going to start with Rangers versus Zvezda, or Red Star Belgrade. I'm going to call them Red Star from here on in because I'm not particularly good at that pronunciation. Rangers, I think, will be relatively pleased with this. And that's no slight on Red Star at all. I think the Rangers would have wanted to avoid Leverkusen and West Ham. It needs to be said the Rangers were exceptional for the best part of both legs against Dortmund. At the second leg, they rode out the storm. They were 2-1 down, and one more goal would have brought the tie level. They dealt with that Dortmund wave of pressure, switched the tactics up at halftime. Shouts out to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, which was excellent, and then killed the game dead. Ryan Kent, probably the player of the knockout rounds as a whole, full stop. It was a masterclass against whoever came up against him, and it was 3 separate players that did so. But I wouldn't be fooled into thinking this tie is an easy one. Red Star have lost just once all season in the league and just once in the Europa League against Midtjylland when they ended the game with 9 men. They topped their group and they conceded just 4 times in that group, which also included Braga. And they've only conceded 14 times in 23 games in the league. The Maracanã and Ibrox, 2 stadiums renowned for atmosphere, but second leg at the former promises a test of not just ability, but metal in a cacophony of noise and intensity. There are people calling this the atmosphere derby, but most importantly, I think it should be a really good game. On to Braga against Monaco. I was really impressed with Braga last night. 2-0 down against Champions League shock package Sheriff of Tiraspol in Transnistria. But when it came back to the quarry, back to Braga, they wrested it back in their favour in really impressive style. The 2 goals were exceptional. And whilst it did need eventually a penalty shootout to take them through, this is a young side and they'll be growing in confidence with every single game. They're a bit clumsy, they're a bit all over the place, and they're a bit emotional. But there should be a tie that they feel they can win. And the best news about that is that Monaco will feel exactly the same. Monaco are incredibly hit and miss. That said, they won a tough group, which included Real Sociedad and PSV Eindhoven without losing a game. And since Philippe Clement came in on January the 3rd this year, they've lost just 1 game in 8, which was a 3-2 reverse away to Montpellier. It does feel a little bit like this squad should be doing better, though. They've drawn their last 2 league games against relegation candidates in Lorient and Bordeaux. And at the back, this young and supremely talented partnership of Axel Disasi and Benoit Badiashile has only been broken up by a hamstring injury to the latter. In the middle, Aurelien Tchouameni, many of you will know, Fofana, both amongst Europe's hottest prospects in midfield. What this means is it's 2 very young sides who are going to look to go at each other, I think. And I'm going to put it down as a dark horse for the most entertaining tie of the round. Talking of entertaining ties, Atalanta drawn against Bayer Leverkusen. Anarchy, bedlam, chaos. The ABC of what the UEL does best. And it's what this draw has thrown up to us. And I've got to give some thank yous out here to Dionysus and Bacchus, the Greek and Roman deities who look after the Europa League. They are its patrons, if you will, for giving us more things to look forward to. If I predict 7-6 on aggregate, we'll get a 1-0, so I'm going to refrain. But I do think this is about as exciting as it gets. 2 coaches here who will not accept anything less than going for the jugular, and 2 sides who love nothing more than scoring goals. Leverkusen flying in the Bundesliga, although a loss to Mainz last weekend did take out the wind from their sails a little bit, but they scored 22 goals in 6 games since coming back from the winter break, which is average of just over 3.5 a game. Atalanta have struggled a little bit of late with injury concerns, but their demolition job on Olympiacos over 2 legs was very, very impressive. And in Ruslan Malinovsky, they have a player who can turn a game on a sixpence and who's turning into one of the most dynamic players in the world, especially from distance. I think this has the potential to be really, really special. Sevilla against West Ham. And when this draw was announced, there was a lot of negativity on social media from West Ham fans. But I think there's more reason to be optimistic than plenty are giving credit for. Yes, Sevilla are 6-time winners of this competition, and they are absolute Europa League stalwarts. but they've been horrible in Europe this year. They only scraped into this playoff round by the skin of their teeth out of a Champions League group that they would have expected to win. And even that was through wastefulness from opposition parties rather than themselves. RB Salzburg missing 2 penalties. Of the 3 they got in one half against Sevilla, jumps to mind. They then failed to impress on their travels against Dinamo Zagreb. And I know the Maximit is a really tough place to go. Tottenham found that out to their chagrin last season. But Julian Lopetegui's frantic motions on the touchline suggested more than a hint of frustration at the way his side were playing. And then Thomas Delaney's reckless challenge and reckless red card means they'll be without him for the first leg of this one as well. West Ham will have the bonus of the second leg being at the London Stadium. And I know they're struggling a little bit with squad depth and how they rotate for these things. And while it looks like the momentum has dropped off a little bit, Sevilla have a bit of a crisis going on themselves, especially on the wings. And with the top 4 looking increasingly like it might be too much of a stretch for West Ham, I think they might well concentrate fire on the Europa League. And if they do, I do think the upset could be on the cards here, especially given the fact that Sevilla are still embroiled in a bit of a title fight themselves. Barcelona versus Galatasaray. And whilst this doesn't quite have the good matchup feel that perhaps, the rest of these games do have, it's unfair not to include it here because this game is dripping in narrative. And any excuse to spend some time talking about just how good Barcelona were last night is going to wash for me, frankly. Frenkie de Jong was majestic, and he scored a majestic goal as Xavi's Blaugrana dismantled Napoli at the Maradona. And it's just the latest in a string of good performances. Barcelona keep improving at a rate of knots. And whilst on paper this isn't a bold claim given the size of the club, given the fact that it's Barcelona in the Europa League, I think they probably soared from sort of 4th or 5th to top of my favourites list in this competition. But the story here is that Gala manager Dominic Torrent is going to be coming home to Barcelona, where he was an assistant coach to Pep Guardiola in the glory years, and he followed the great man to Bayern and to City. And it's also an opportunity for young goalkeeper Iñaki Peña, who's on loan from Barcelona to Galatasaray, to show his worth to his parent club on a big stage, especially in a year, I think, where Marc-Andre ter Stegen is having a bit of a wobbly campaign. So perhaps just one to keep an eye on for the faithful of Narrative FC. Let's go to the Europa Conference League then, and where I think the unheralded little brother has come into its own. Some massive matchups in this last 16 and some big guns colliding, which we didn't really see in the Europa League. Leicester, Rennes. I think this is about as tough a draw as Leicester could have been handed, to be honest. Yes, you could point to Roma, but Mourinho's men are more inconsistent, and Rennes are a side that thrive on beating big guns. They drew with Tottenham in the group stages. They've beaten PSG and Lyon across the course of this Ligue 1 campaign. And in Gaëtan Laborde, they have a target man who is an absolute handful for defences. And in Jeremy Doku and Kamaldeen Sulemana, a wing pairing which would terrify anybody. So that, as a front 3, I think is going to scare the living daylights out of Leicester, considering the shakiness of their defensive line that we've seen across the course of this season. Both teams have been inconsistent, but Rennes' league position is testament to the fact that they are having a better and more balanced campaign, I think, than the Foxes. Look, none of this means that Leicester won't progress, of course. They have the strongest squad in the competition, and they should be fancying themselves to take on all comers. They can, of course, take solace in the fact that if they progress here, they've eliminated what is, for me, one of the top 4 teams left in this competition. But to get it so early on is a really tough gig. Vitesse against Roma, an interesting one for Mourinho's boys, who continue to baffle me a bit with their Serie A struggles. Squad is not quite yet what Mourinho wants, but with the personnel on board, I do think there's an argument they should be doing a little bit better. Yet they remain unbeaten in their last 5 in the league, and they will fancy themselves as formidable favourites in this competition. And it's also one that Mourinho obviously hasn't won yet because it's new. He loves a new trophy, does the pig man. And it's an opportunity to get some silverware on the board. Silverware that's been all too rare in recent times in the red side of the Eternal City. And say what you like about Mourinho, but ultimately he wins trophies. Now, they might not be the trophies that a team is looking for. In Man United's case, you saw that treble of the League Cup, the Europa League, and the treble, including the Community Shield. But the fact that United have won nothing since then points to a fact that Mourinho was a man who got them over the line and got silverware in the cabinet when nobody else was doing so. I think he might look to do something very similar here with Roma. And Vitesse were impressive in the second leg of their tie against Rapid Vienna, coming down back from 2-1 down with 2 goals in the first 20 minutes that saw them safely through into the last 16. 2 delightful assists from Vitesse, right wing back, the highlight for me. They did beat Tottenham in the groups. They drew 3-3 with Rennes away, which was the result that saw them into that playoff round. And I think they'll prove a tougher nut to crack than perhaps many expect. Still, they're 6th in the Eredivisie and some way off the pace of the big guns. PSV and Ajax beat them 5-0 apiece in consecutive games recently. So it's a test for Roma, but one I think they should probably pass. Finally, I want to talk about FK Bodø Glimt versus AZ Alkmaar. Bodø Glimt pulled off the headline coup of the playoff round. They eliminated Celtic 5-1 and in some style as well, especially given the fact that they hadn't played a competitive game since December and they'd lost some key pieces since their second place finish behind Mourinho's Roma, who they beat 6-1 in the group stages. But they're turning into a side that nobody wants to play. Based in the Arctic Circle, playing on an artificial surface at home, they're a bit of a nightmare draw for anybody. And they come up against an AZ side where they will be underdogs, but probably only just. AZ currently 4th in the Netherlands behind the famous Big Three, and they're having a good season. They're the last side to beat all-conquering Ajax, who stormed into the Champions League last 16 unbeaten, still unbeaten in Europe this year, of course. Pascal Janssen has built something good at AZ. Skipper Owen Wijndal's now a national team regular. Danny De Vit's come into his own in midfield since that move from Ajax. And Greek international Vangelis Pavlidis, one, what a name, two, once of Borussia Dortmund. He's leading the line and starting to feel like he's coming to life. I really like the balance of this tie more than most. I'm putting it in here because I think it has the makings of a really intriguing spectacle. There we are. Initial reactions to the draw. I'll be back before those round of 16 first legs in both competitions. Take a look at a couple of games in a little bit more depth. But for now, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit that subscribe button and share it with any of your mates who you think might be becoming Europa League or Europa Conference League ultras after the last couple of weeks. I feel like we're starting to grow the family. Cheers for watching.